Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Saturday morning's property show. Welcome everybody on TikTok. We're live on TikTok and all the other social media platforms. And today, Jim, we are going to be talking about choosing a buy-to-let and really how to pick the right investment property and market it properly as well. I think there's a lot of key elements in there to get it right, and because you could get it quite wrong as well, and it could be quite costly. So we're going to try and cover that today as best we can.
It's quite an interesting. Well, as best we can, probably as the best as anybody can ever do.
Yeah, well, okay.
I'll be honest, because I talked to somebody the other day, and it's like, if I could be a millionaire in 8 years from a standing start, homeless, unemployed, then somebody else could do this in 5 years.
Yeah.
Or even 10 years. What does it matter? Even 15 years. What, you're going to be a millionaire anytime soon in 20 years if that's the case.
And I think ultimately everybody who's looking to build an investment portfolio and things, I mean, maybe not necessarily setting out to be a millionaire, but they're looking to set themselves up for retirement. They're looking for a wee bit of an nest egg. They're looking for that extra income. So you want to do it properly, and you want to do it where you're going to have yourself getting that cash flow.
Yeah, okay. The millionaire thing's just a benchmark. It's like, what would you do if you had $1 million? That's really what it comes down to. Now, I'll be honest, you've not actually got a tangible million in your hands, although it is nice. I've had it before in the bank. But I talk about $1 million as a net worth. In other words, you are worth. In other words, your assets minus your liabilities, your debts, and it's over $1 million. That's what you can do if you follow the pattern of success and you understand the financial freedom blueprint. And I don't, I think it's a lot down to Richard, that the fact that the people that actually listen to this or listen to me when I'm talking actually don't believe and have faith in themselves that they could actually achieve it because of the mindset they've got and they've adopted from an early position based on the peer group round about them. That's all it is. It's what you've been told by everybody else. It's like, that's for the likes of someone else. That's no for the likes of us. What makes you think you're so special is a classic. Every single time.
A lot of what this relates to is what we cover in the Wealth Creation Show that we do on a Monday.
Don't get ideas above your station, laddie. How many people have actually had that? What makes you think so special? Don't get ideas above your station. That's no for the likes of us. I bet you everybody tuning in right now and listen to this later on has heard that in their life at some point in time growing up. That's what's kept you back, because you've actually believed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I know that. How do I know that? Because that's what I did. I believed other people. I believed people that were older than me, because I automatically assumed it was over the, with age comes respect. It's like, yeah, it does come respect, but it doesn't mean to say you've got to listen to their advice. It just means you've got to respect that person because of what they've done and what they've left and the legacy they've left as well, because they've helped create what it is round about you right now.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have it so good right now if it wasn't for the people that came before you. If you don't have it so good right now, you can change that.
Definitely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And like I say, it does tie in a lot with what we talk about in the Wealth Creation Show on Mondays and things, isn't it? It's quite a good show if you're a buy-to-let investor and looking to build your own success and a portfolio of things. Tune in on Mondays, that is great. But today we're going to look at choosing the right buy-to-let, and rental yields have risen to their highest since they've been since 2018. We've had 3 consecutive quarters of growth, taking the UK average to 6.1%, according to a new survey that was done on Landlords by Paragon Bank. Jim.
I think it's more.
Yeah, possibly it is, and that's why
I do think it's more. I think the people that Paragon Bank actually have access to are obviously just their customers. And while they've got their customers, that's fine. That's a limited customer base. But you've got a lot of people out there, like landlords like myself, that actually can make significantly higher yields out of what we're doing because of how we do it. Nothing else other than that. It's not about charging more rent. It's about being good with your occupancy rate, with your actual interest rate where you're starting from, and also actually your rent level as well, to make sure. And then your costs and keeping them under control. So that's what makes the fundamental difference. You're not actually charging any more for a tenant, because everybody immediately assumes it's like, obviously you're charging more. It's like, we're not. I'm actually 23% less than inflation. So stick that in your pipe and smoke it, all you neggies out there. say landlords take advantage of tenants, because the reality is we don't. Well, actually, most landlords are probably charging a lot less than what the inflation rate is over the period of time they've had the property.
Well, that became apparent when all the new legislation come in, and then interest rates rose, and then people were left exiting the market and things because they couldn't afford to.
Yes, the only reason rents have gone so high in Scotland, way beyond the UK, is because of rent controls. The very thing it was supposed to stop that actually caused it.
I've just got a couple of people asking on TikTok who's speaking. Jim's talking. We do a show on a Saturday morning. We also do the Wealth Creation Show on a Monday and things. We do it through our other social media platforms, but TikTok you have to do on the phone. So you could only see me, but Jim is on screen, so you can hear him.
Yeah.
Anyway, so although it is great to see national data reflecting the rental market in the different areas, and as we say, as the UK as a whole, where there is massive demand from tenants continually making buy-to-lets really a lucrative investment choice. So I think for anybody who's out there that's wondering about becoming a landlord or looking to expand their portfolio, there are some keys to success, and they lay in buying well for your target audience and your target market, and really honing in your knowledge on all the different areas, and we're going to cover them today. And they range from shaping your selection process to renting to single people, renting to couples, renting to sharers, renting to families. I mean, whatever kind of target audience or demographic you aim to provide housing for, you really need to think about that and kind of think outside the box about what their needs are and appeal to them. So that's what we're going to be exploring today, and kind of try and give you kind of the essentials toolkit for choosing the perfect buy-to-let property time and time again for your target audience.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about that, but we're obviously going to have had a huge insight of knowledge, wealth, and experience in terms of what we're doing. So it may sound, when you read the article we've got in here, which is a primary script that we base things on, we do add a lot of value into what we're talking about, especially with my track record over 30 years of being a landlord. I've probably been one of the biggest landlords in the UK.
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to start off by talking about shaping your selection process. And whatever type of rental property you're looking for, and whoever you maybe want to attract as a tenant, there are really some golden rules to follow for having that low maintenance, long-term lettings, stress-free, and things that tick over. As we say time and time again, Jim, and you're quite an advocate of saying boring pays well, and it does.
Of course it does.
So remember that a great location for possibly sharers may not work for potentially families, and you need to do your research to ensure that the property that you buy is first-rate fit and it will tie in with your target audience. So if you're looking for a property that will appeal to families, you're going to have obviously outside space, the bedrooms to accommodate a family, the location for schools, and all these kind of different factors that's going to appeal to a family unit. Also, I think remembering annoyances like inadequate storage is a really good one as well. If you've got fittings and fixtures that maybe dribbling showers and dripping taps and things like that, they're not going to work for a busy family life. Also, use timeless, high-quality fittings. I'm not saying get the best of the best, but use good mid-range quality fittings and things in a property that are going to stand the test of time. And all these fads and things, you could stay on trend, but all these fads and things fade very fast, and being cheap will always come back to haunt you in a rental property. If you're going to put in fixtures, fittings and make upgrades, but try and do it cheaply or not use proper tradesmen and things, it will come back to bite you and it'll be a costly mistake. So that's things to think about as well. It's also quite important to respond to the desires of your tenant as well. To the tenant, because obviously people want to live in a certain area and they want to feel safe in their home. They want to have good natural light. We talk about that a lot when we're talking about getting property ready for the market. And where the landlord is clearly on top of maintenance and repairs and things, this is going to appeal to tenants because it can clearly be shown and demonstrated in the property that you present to the market and to your tenant ultimately. Would you agree, Jim?
Yeah, definitely think so. You know, it's all about it is. I mean, the selection process. There's an abundance of tenants out there right now, anyway, and there's limited stock available out there as well. So as long as you've got a property and you actually finish it to a really good standard, medium to high standard in terms of the finish, depending on what market you're looking for, then you're going to attract the right person at the right point and the right level as well, and you're going to get the better return. You're going to get a long-term return as well, because obviously occupancy rate is one of the most important things.
Yeah.
So I definitely think your selection process has got to be key. Are you going to be going for holiday lets? Are you going to be going for mainstream residential renting? Are you going to be going for student lets? Are you going to go in for? Are you going to play the housing benefit market, the local housing allowance market? Because that's where I first started off. I identified a gap. I identified a need at that time, and that's the market I played to. And then I was appalled when I first started out as well about the fact that a lot of tenants who were actually on benefits and housing benefit and local housing allowance actually didn't feel they were worth the rent getting paid. The rent getting paid, as if the rent getting paid was no association with them. Therefore,
like they weren't paying the rent.
they didn't really deserve to have their property fixed and maintained because the state paid their money for them. And I'm like, really?
That's because society has made them feel that way.
Yeah, probably that's 30 years ago. So that's kind of how I think most people made them feel when they felt downtrodden, run down, and all the rest of it. And I went, well, come and stay with us then, if that's the case, and we'll certainly look after you and make sure you're all right, and we'll just get the rent paid direct from the government. And the rest was history. That's where I first started. It was a lot of good relationships. It was a good market, but it is no longer the best market possible now, and it's purely because of the legislation surrounding it, and also the way the system's administered now. It's absolutely appalling the way the system's administered now. It's not administered by the council anymore, and I had a great relationship with the council, and the council was able to make sure that everything was processed properly on behalf of all the landlords, because they're just a processing department. They just wanted to get it through and tick all the boxes and make sure everybody was looked after and make sure the money was there for the tenant to be able to do repairs and improvements over time. And that's how we worked with the council very, very well. But the government and the way the system's done now in universal credit is pretty appalling. And the fact is, if anything does go wrong, it's really, really difficult to do anything about it now, because the way the First Tribunal and the way the Scottish Government's actually changed the legislation from mandatory eviction to discretionary. In other words, it's weird. It's like, if you've got 6 kids, it's like, okay, if somebody's got 6 kids or 3 kids or 4 kids or 2 kids or whatever it is, it's like all of a sudden it's like, well, you're not allowed to evict them even though they're not paying the rent after 2 years. Sorry,
crazy.
It's like, so I'm just going to continue to house them, and I'm, even though they don't continue to pay the rent. It's where do you go with that? That's why you've got landlords exiting the market and no longer wanting to deal with the universal credit market.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, even from the changeover from housing benefit to universal credit, which was, we had to do a lot of changes and things, and guide people on what to do, and even retrain ourselves on how things work. We even got that kind of up and running, and it was fine. And then the new legislation come in, like you said, Jim, and just changed everything completely.
Yeah, administrative nightmare.
Yeah, can I just Sticks and Ollard on TikTok saying, someone recommended me landlord.scot, but I don't know how to join that platform. I'd probably recommend joining SAL, Scottish Association of Landlords.
Scottish Association of Landlords is definitely, if you're a landlord, and don't give me this rubbish about you've only got one property, so it really doesn't matter that much. Your voice has to be heard, and by joining the Scottish Association of Landlords, it's only about £100 a year. It's tax deductible, so if you're a higher rate payer, you're only paying £60 really in real terms. And the first phone call or the knowledge and information you get from them, that £60 is covered straight away. And advice.
Yeah.
So and plus the fact you've now got a voice, a single voice, which actually is like a union more or less for landlords, which will represent you against the Scottish government. And just now, because 94% of landlords only have one property, a lot of landlords don't do that, and a lot of landlords are actually just letting agencies as well. So they feel, I don't really need to do that. But if SAL's not got the numbers, then they don't have the voice. Therefore, the government don't listen to them. Therefore, that's why you should get behind SAL, the Association of Scottish Landlords.
Yeah. That's a good way, Jim. Obviously, you said it is like a union for landlords, and it is that unified voice for landlords as a whole. But you have, everybody individually, it's very difficult to be heard. So
if you're not a member of SAL, let's just put this bluntly, if you're not a member of SAL at this point in time, then you've got no right to go on about the government, about what they're doing to landlords. Because the reality is, you're not putting your money where your mouth is and actually supporting the organisation, which is representing you as a private landlord, and you're not even supporting them by paying £100 a year in membership to do that. That's why it's important that you join SAL and become a member alongside all of us. Some of us contribute a bit more, like, for example, when the legal case came for taking adjudication, I put 5,000 into that in order to make sure that got over the line, and that was important to do that. But every landlord should join as a result of it.
Yeah. Andrea's in the comments here saying, do you need to be a registered landlord to let a family member live in your empty home if you cannot get it sold? Yes, technically. I mean, if you're going to let to them properly, yes.
Yeah, that's the law.
Yeah. So yeah. And anyway, and just to finish up on the selection process that we were talking about there, finally, just to think about, and we've done a show about this, and you could catch it on the YouTube channel, but thinking about future net zero legislation as well. And as I say, we've done a whole show on that. If you're considering buy-to-let property with a lower EPC rating, the price should really reflect that for you to be able to do the improvements and upgrades to bring that energy efficiency up. Because as we did explain in previous shows, it is coming, the legislation. The can's been kicked down the road, but it will arrive eventually. So think about that.
Yeah, you'd be better doing it when you're doing any improvements or upgrades over time, just actually making sure your EPC's improved anyway as a natural result of that. So you don't have the major disruption caused by it. For example, the one is the installation. A lot of people just bypass it because they think, well, you don't see it and it doesn't make any cosmetic improvement. But it'll come back to haunt you if you just don't do it when you're making a major refurb, because if you have to do it retrospectively, the upset to the tenant is probably far greater than the fact is you could have done it at the same time as your normal refurb. So they're all see what I mean about just the article on its own doesn't actually cover all these things that we should think about at the time. But it's really important that you get everybody on board with listening to the podcasts and watching the show as well. For anybody that's tuning in and listening and actually share it on the landlord forums and landlord platforms, because we're all in this together, and there's only about 300,000 landlords. There's 2 million in England, landlords, private landlords, but it is a unified voice to make sure that I think it's all about bringing the sector up in professionalism, and also bringing the standard of properties up in professionalism, for the tenant as well. So ultimately, I talked as if it's like a one-sided thing about, landlords protecting themselves. But the reality is, this is all really about improving the conditions and whatever it is for the tenant, ultimately. Because at the end of the day, that's our customer. Without them, we're out of business.
Yeah, definitely. I would 100% agree with that, Jim. And it's like you said, Jim, quite a lot. Rising tide lifts all ships.
Yeah. So let's look at the single renting to single tenants. I'm not a big fan. Okay. So single tenants who rent an entire home to live in alone are choosing their most expensive lifestyle option, which means that they're often higher earners, and that's fine with me, because then they use less of the property. Therefore, it's less wear and tear, especially if they can afford it. But reaching a certain income level comes with the ability to pay for some extra style and comfort to reward all that hard work. So think about the following when you're considering what to buy for that type of tenant.
Yeah,
I think it's all about really stylish and space efficient and well equipped 1-bedroom homes that can be easily cleaned and kept tidy. Are the perfect match for a tenant. We talked about this the other day. I was actually talking to a contractor about Kidd Street in Kirkcaldy, the full refurbishment we're doing. And he was talking about doing the horseshoe kitchen, and I went, but you don't need all these cupboards. It's a flat, it's ground floor. It will never change from that.
I already covered that with them, I think.
It's fine. Sometimes
Yeah.
people have to hear it 2 or 3 times before they
Yeah.
take it in. That's a real good lesson, by the way. Sometimes people have to hear it
Yeah.
2 or 3 times from different people before they actually take it in as what the facts are at that
Yeah.
point in time. So this is why I said to him, you should just be doing an L-shaped kitchen where the fridge freezer goes at the bottom. You've got a bit of worktop with a unit underneath, unit at the top, and then you've got the oven hob and extractor
Extractor, yeah.
integrated. Then you come round, you've got unit at the bottom in the corner and also at the top as well. And then you come round to the sink, and then underneath the sink, underneath the drainer side, on the right-hand side at the top or the left-hand side, depending what L-shaped kitchen you're doing, you put the washing machine in. And he went, but you've got the
boilers
you've got
above.
at the back of it. I went, well, I'm not caring if the washing machine's out 6 inches from the worktop. It makes no difference because it's not going to impinge on the tenant. But it's also going to make sure that there's a huge amount of space there for the tenant, so they're no shoehorned into this wee galley style kitchen. And
they could even get a wee table and chairs in there.
The bit at the side that you're trying to improve there is neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, for somebody that's just using it for themselves, maybe a couple even, and we're going to talk about that in a wee while. It's adequate. It does the job. You don't need any more. It's overkill, and it costs more money. Therefore, you've got to get a higher return. Therefore, but it's actually more difficult for the tenant to actually use at that point in time.
Actually living it, yeah.
Yeah, studio apartments are actually a quite good one as well, and they produce higher yields because they're all in one place, and they can often have a higher turnover of tenants as people get tired of actually living in the living room. So sometimes so you've got to think about the occupancy rate and the turnover and how long it's going to take to get another tenant in for having studio apartments. But the other one as well is probably single people often appreciate extra facilities like, well, the things that are happening now in Glasgow. You're getting the all-round lifestyle living, which is the residence gym, the concierge, the communal garden, the convenience store, and perhaps even parking if there's no nearby transport.
They've got that in Cottage as well.
That's the bigger high rises you're getting at this point in time that are getting built for the investment houses and in the banks and stuff like that. And that's fine. That's their market. My market is village and towns.
Yeah.
You're never going to get something like that in a village and a town. So that's why I'm not worried about that type of investor, the banks and the investment houses, because they'll never go for the wee towns and villages.
Yeah.
It's impossible. There's no proper return there. They have to have economies of scale to provide all these facilities, that lifestyle living with the gymnasium and everything, and the concierge, and they have to have about 600 or 700 units in one block.
Yeah,
and
to
it's
make
basically
it viable,
and it's fine, and it suits that person at that time, and that's why they have to site it into the cities. And possibly with Glasgow, it's obviously just overlooking the Clyde. So that's that sort of thing, and useful amenities as well, especially for an easy lifestyle, are magnetic qualities that single tenants often prize. That can actually put your property ahead of the market and boost your yield with a premium rent when you get stuff like that.
But those types of properties will always come at a premium rent. But like you say, Jim, there's a place for them. And like as you say, Glasgow and in the cities.
Personally, single people, not a market for me because of where I've got my stock. And the likelihood is sometimes now and again I have to take into account that possibly the person might end up on universal credit. And if you're single and under 35, you'll only get a studio rent. You'll only get basically a bed sit rent allocated, which is like £275. Now, if you've got a one bedroom, which are renting now for about 400 quid, then there's no way they're going to be able to afford that. So if you're under 35, it's probably a no-go for that reason. So that's why my typical profile for a single person is often they're over 35. They're probably earning about maybe 30, 40, 50,000. And they've got a certain type of property. I mean, we've got that one in Leven, which is the 2-bedroom semi-detached house, and one of the most desirable areas in Leven, and he's just on his own, but he's quite happy with that.
He's quite happy, But yeah, so as you say, Jim, you're probably more prone to couples that probably end up starting a family or the family unit. And we're going to move on to talk about couples now.
Couples are good. Couples are good. There's a couple of reservations about couples when people are getting together for the first time and they're moving in together for the first time. I'm often nervous because knowing somebody, and I know this by personal experience, and I know it by relationships that other people have had. It's just wisdom that you acquire over the years, that, you know, being together with someone and you're not living together is a totally different relationship than being in each other's pockets every single day. You've gone through it as well, Richard. You know, I've gone through it as well, and having someone else 24/7 in your face all the time, you know, and in your lifestyle all the time, encroaching on all the things that you used to do, you used to enjoy on your own, is a completely different lifestyle choice. That's why I'm always nervous when people go for the first time. Well, we've been living at our mum and dad's and we just want to get together and try it out for the first. Well, wait a minute. Try it out to me means it's like I could end up suffering for this. Either left with one person who can't afford the rent, or two people who are just leaving and just they've just moved in, they're leaving again. So the entry cost and exit costs for me are quite high. Or they might end up being antisocial because they just can't get on with each other and then start affecting the neighbours round about them. Or they've never lived together in their own house for the first time, so then their lifestyle choices and the friends that they attract, it's the entourage that comes with them, often could be a problem because of that. So these are things you've got to think about as a landlord in terms of when you come down to a choice of numerous people for a property, about who you would actually take as a result of that. And it really comes down to things like that on personal preference, because if everybody's offering you 500 quid for the rent and everybody's in a position to do something, then it's going to come down to the person that's got maybe a job for a longer time, stability, maybe a higher salary, possibly they've maybe got no pets, they're maybe just a single person rather than a couple. And it maybe that's the best choice, or they've got a cast iron guarantor behind them as well. So these are things to think about, but couples, you know, they appeal to certain things. So what's your thoughts on it, Richard?
Yeah, well, just picking up on what you said there, Jim, it really does then come back to the conversations you have and the interactions you have with potential tenants, and picking up on certain things that they say and whether that is going to transpire to be a successful tenancy or not. And like you say, if it's new couples that are in together, as we were saying there, the natural step for tenants after possibly renting on their own is to move in then with a partner, which adds a few extra requirements to really think about, and then also to accommodate a household for two people. And these things include, while you get away with maybe smaller double bedrooms for a single person, a couple will need significant more storage for two lots of clothing and personal belongings, and you need to think about all that, and storage is a big thing. Two people eat double the food, so the kitchen needs to be obviously more cover space. Like we were just talking about the kitchens and this one you were talking about Kid Street. Meals together also become a thing, so having somewhere to sit and eat and have maybe even just a table for two, but space to have that is a really big plus point, and will make it all the more appealing to couples.
That's why the old properties, you know, the big ones with the big massive rooms and the high ceilings, and I'm going to mention Taylor Street in Aber Hill. You know, often people will actually go, "Oh no, I wouldn't live there," and it's like, wait a minute, it's like the rooms are huge. That's the one thing I had going for it a lot of the times. Apart from the fact it's right next to Leiden and now right next to the train station.
The train station,
which I knew was coming. It was only a matter of time before it appeared in the future. I just waited 30 years for it, that's all. From buying. But it was a good investment now in hindsight.
In hindsight, yeah, definitely.
But they have had returns, because you know yourself, you know, some of these I bought for £9,000 and £15,000, and I've had rent about 100,000 over the years out of them. So they've certainly paid themselves back time over time and time again. But effectively that could happen for everybody, because everybody will go, shock horror, that's unbelievable. But that could happen for anybody with any property. Because if you're buying a property at 50,000 today, and then you look at the rents over the next 30 years you're going to acquire, it's going to probably be about 150 to 200,000 for that property, with the fact that rents go up over a period of time all the time.
But also, money aside, those properties have provided housing for multiple families over the years. And as we were saying, built up some really good relationships with tenants.
I've probably housed thousands of people over the years and thousands of families, and looked after them from start to finish. Yeah. So, and for me, I think for me, apart from the financial benefit, well, the financial benefit goes back into the system anyway, and it looks after the tenants. And I don't really take anything out of that, and I just keep reinvesting and building wealth over a period of time for the next generations of my families to come, and my children as well, once I finally pass it over to them. That for me is probably one of the major things that made me want to be a landlord. I was just appalled by the way tenants were treated 30 years ago. I mean, some people out there, especially as TikTokers, the ones that just like to vilify and castigate landlords and make us out to be Dick Dastardly most of the time. If everybody remembers Wacky Races, Dick Dastardly. But they make us out to be. But I tell you what, it was like 30 years ago. 30 years ago, you had Rachman. Then you also had Van Hoosenfeld, these type of landlords, which would just take you and throw you in the street and throw your stuff out the window at the same time. That's where the legislation came in, because of these people. One or two landlords just made it like that for us, and yet it could have all been different. And it was different until again, the flip side of that, I suppose, Rachman, Van Hoosenfeld, and now Patrick Harvey.
Yeah.
When you think about it in the same context, but the other side, Patrick Harvey's caused the problem for the rents going up for everybody, and also made the sector even more controlled now as a result of it. So his actions have actually caused that problem.
Yeah, and it's been detrimental to a lot of landlords, and it's also had the knock-on effect, and ultimately to the tenants. The tenants.
I wonder how Patrick Harvey would feel about me saying his name in the same context as Van Hoosenfeld and Rachman, because effectively that's what he is. He's just on the other side. It's just a wolf in sheep's clothing in terms of what he's done to the sector. It's no bother me. My rents have gone up, and I'm making more money than ever before now because of Patrick Harvey. That is mental. And it's no for the fact that I'm wanting to. It's the fact that he's told us to do it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Anyway, sorry, just back to obviously couples and finding the appropriate accommodation and property, buy-to-let property for couples. We maybe instantly think couples still need a one-bedroom apartment or flat or whatever, but nowadays it's a lot more common to have that spare room. Single bedrooms are popular for having maybe a workspace at home. A lot of people work at home, especially if it's working professional couples, or maybe a guest bedroom to have friends, family come over. Or even possibly a nursery later on if they're going to start a family, to postpone the need to move as soon as they have a baby. Do you could have that smaller second room that could be an office, and then ultimately could be a baby's room for a year or two. So paying attention to these areas and looking into the future and thinking ahead makes it easier for couples to keep renting your property longer, rather than having to move as soon as maybe they have a job change, or maybe they do have a child or whatever.
I'm surprised, and this is just for tenants, a bit of advice for them. I'm surprised the amount of tenants actually feel, because they've had a child, they need to immediately find another place with another bedroom. And I'm like, no, you don't. You're 6 months before the cot's out of or a year even before the cot's out of the main bedroom. And that's just the way it is. So and that'll be a bigger cost to you. So save yourself some money in the short term, and actually, because that's the only time you'll get it, because they're growing up after that. They're not going to stop growing up. And don't move so quick. Save some money, put it together, put it to getting clothes and food and all the rest of it, and probably a bit better lifestyle as a result of it. And don't just knee-jerk reaction and think you should get a bigger house just because you've got a new member of the family coming along. I see that quite a lot when people come to sell and buy. It's like, oh, we're needing to buy another one because we've got a baby on the way. And I'm like, flipping heck, you're about a year or maybe even 2 years away from actually needing another bedroom.
It's need over want over need.
Yeah, it's a lot of conditioning socially as well, and peer pressure that comes around that, because everybody tells them they should be doing it.
Yeah, it's the expectation of others that's influencing your decisions.
But you're right, spare single bedrooms over and above. can have that guest bedroom, workspace, and all the rest of it for people. It's a good point.
Yeah. So we're going to move on to talk about renting to sharers.
Oh dear, my favourite subject.
I knew you were going to say that. I know.
I'm not a fan.
I know. It can be a wee bit tricky when you're renting to sharers, and there are two ways to rent to sharers, and that's a single household with everyone on a single tenancy agreement, or a multiple occupancy, so a HMO, a housing of multiple occupancy, with separate contracts for each room and things. So, but we don't deal with HMOs, and predominantly in Fife, it's St Andrews, it's HMO. So it's more Edinburgh cities and things. HMOs are quite popular. So
just to reiterate there, Richard, and jump in at that point when you talk about HMOs, that's where you're absolutely right. It is cities and it is university towns. But me personally, I don't think HMOs is the way forward for a lot of investors, purely for the fact that you've got the huge banks and investment houses wanting to build student accommodation. And the government will fall over themselves in order to allow that to happen, because as far as they're concerned, they would rather have a corporate landlord, in their impression, corporate landlord driven by profit, by the way, rather than a private landlord like ourselves, who tends to be a bit more thoughtful, I would say, and actually can work with a tenant if they come across hard times, where corporate landlords like, no, you're not paying your rent, evictions in motion. Let's get the process done. And that's what I see as the fundamental difference between there. So HMOs, fantastic. University town cities, again, not really a threat to your single private landlord who's actually in a village or a town. Because it's not that important to them. Plus the fact they're not getting involved in HMO because they've maybe only got a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom, and it's impossible for an HMO for that, because you're ideally just going to have one person in each room, and that means if they're unrelated, they're still under legislation, no requirement to have it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. So HMOs, there is a lot to think about. It's not something that we deal with in predominantly university towns and cities, but obviously HMOs is in here, so we're going to cover it. But there are licensing and room sizing rules for HMOs that can change across different local authorities. So whether it's Fife, Edinburgh, whether it's, do you know what I mean? It does change, so be aware of that. But there are also some universal guidelines for minimising tenant turnover as well. So stick to double bedrooms with enough space for a bed, a wardrobe, chest of drawers, a desk, obviously, if it's going to be students and things in there, where a tenant can stay comfortably for a reasonable amount of time. Also, kitchen areas, they have plenty of cupboard space to accommodate multiple people living in the property. Remember, they're going to be sharing common area and kitchen area, with an extra large fridge for storage for food, and enough space for a table where people can sit and eat as well.
Do you know?
These are all things you need to think about.
I would be more inclined, and I saw it at Stirling University when I was there on the Graduate Enterprise Programme, where they had their fridge in the communal area, but actually they had lockable compartments in the fridge itself. Yeah, because I'll tell you what, you'd be surprised how many arguments can kick off purely for the fact that you've eaten my butter, or you've had my bacon, and while the other person doesn't give a jot. And because it's different, people think different ways. It's how they're brought up. They just help themselves, and it's like, well, what's your problem? I could have just but I might have wanted it now. I was actually probably we even have that on that level with our partners and our family, don't we? I even got the drawer or something like that, and I got the fridge, and I open it and I go, where's that vegan sausage roll I bought? And Scott just goes, yum.
I was hungry.
It's like, I was looking forward to that. My brain was going, yeah, I could have that. That'll be great. And it's like, you open the fridge and it's like, oh my God, it's gone. So definitely consider lockable fridges. I know it won't always be appropriate, but sometimes, it might be affordable to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and another thing in HMOs, and talking about confrontation and things, looking for properties with bathrooms for every possibly 2 to 3 tenants. Now, I think the law states 4, but bathrooms can cause a lot of controversy and battles between people. So and leading to a lot of domestic dissatisfaction and regularly having to replace tenants because they'll come and go if they're not happy.
Is that a diplomatic way of saying fights and arguments?
Yes, that was like that. I was trying to think of that there, and I'm like, oh, yeah, but that basically it causes confrontation and bathroom. I mean, I don't know about everybody, but I grew up in a house with it was me, my two sisters, my brother, mum, and my dad, and we all shared one bathroom. And getting ready in the morning was a challenge. Do you know, everybody's fighting to get in and trying to get out the door. And
I never thought about that. That was the same with me. You know, we grew up in a house like that as well, just one bathroom between everybody. I never even thought of like that. I don't think I ever had. Well, I think it was my sister that spent most of the time in the bathroom. Yeah, so maybe that. Yeah, now in hindsight, you're probably right. It probably was a challenge, and it would have been better to have something downstairs, which could accommodate. But most HMOs tend to have bigger rooms, and they often adapt to having an ensuite in each room,
or even just a sink, a wash hand basin, and things as well. I've noticed that in some of the HMO properties.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I mean, HMOs, they're quite pricey. If you can get them without the HMO and you know you're going to get the HMO granted, then fair enough.
Yeah.
But just now, it's quite difficult in the Fife area to get an HMO granted, especially in St Andrews. If it's not been HMO before. Some of the HMOs before are actually just getting told, no, we're not going to accommodate you anymore.
We've got one in St Andrews, which I let as a residential because the HMO couldn't get reinstated. It now has been reinstated. It's actually on the market for sale now, and the HMO has been reinstated. But that's a big selling point because it was able to be granted again, so that obviously it's there that it can be used. So,
well, the difference in value, the very fact that it's no longer able to get HMO, there's an argument there straight away that the government or the local council has actually devalued your property overnight. Yeah. Because it could drop like a stone by about 100 or 150,000 just because it's not got the HMO in it.
That kind of falls into like forced appreciation.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I would say so, yeah. Forced appreciation when it was HMO and forced depreciation when it gets it taken away from it. So I think the councils and the government needs to tread carefully when they think about that legislation about just taking an HMO off somebody, because quite rightly they've maybe got recourse against them if they've not got any real fundamental reason why to do it other than just, we just think there's too many HMOs, or just an opinion.
So, yeah, renting to sharers and HMOs and things. We've done a previous blog on this, Jim, and it's actually called Renting to Sharers. The link's in the blog attached to this. So anybody that wants a wee bit more information, it goes a lot more into detail in there. So if that's your target market and you want some more information, click through on that and you'll see our show on that as well. And the blog attached, which will have a lot more in-depth information and give you a more full picture with tons of more tips and things, because we could probably talk about each topic all day, but we need to obviously get through. So renting to sharers is on in the post above. And then we're going to finally talk about renting to families. And this is where you kind of your target audience, Jim, I would say, with your portfolio. Would I be right in saying renting to families?
Renting to anyone, I don't really particularly mind that much. It's, as I said, if I had a 4-bedroom and one person was what to take it, I would obviously question that why, because you wouldn't need 4 bedrooms. But then if they could afford it and it's just for them because they're maybe wanting to work from home, or they're maybe needing a gym in another room, so they're maybe needing all the rooms for a specific purpose, and they're maybe got a craft room or something like that. I'm sure I had somebody that wanted a dancing room at one point. Years and years ago,
just on an individual basis sometimes.
Yeah, just for them, and I was like, why would you need all this? And then they reeled it off, and I went, oh right, okay, that makes sense. So definitely, probably renting to families is the mainstream, especially if you've got a number of income earners in that family, because if one of their incomes goes down, the other ones can step in and afford it.
Yeah.
But there's the flip side of that, is you've got more people in a property, so therefore higher wear and tear. So therefore, that's why you have to then cut your cloth to suit your purpose and think to yourself, should I be charging just a wee bit more rent because the refurb is going to be a lot more expensive, or any the wear and tear is going to cause a lot more expense as well in a shorter period of time. So these are things, and I know people out there go, well, that wouldn't apply to me because I've only got one property or whatever. But But you've got to think about that. Remember, you're a professional landlord. You're a professional business person, really. That's ultimately what you are. And you're there to provide a professional service to a customer who is your tenant. And you've got a duty of care to make sure everything's safe and wind and watertight for them under the Standard Repairing Act, as well as just morally for that reason. So while you feel that you should actually be going, tell you what, I'll just give you £200 off the rent every single month. And they go, yeah, that's fantastic. When it comes to a repair or an improvement you've got to do and you've got no money to do it, tenant's not going to forgive you. They're not going to put their hand in their pocket and say, you want that rent back that you gave me. So you need to make sure you charge the right amounts in order to reinvest back in the property to make sure the tenant gets the service they expected. Because they're not going to give you a buy or a pass or anything, but because you did them that favour when it comes round that you need the improvements done.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Jim, and that's the thing as well. A lot of people, I've seen a lot of landlords over the years think, "Oh, I'll cut them a deal and I'll do a bit less," and it's like, but then when it comes around, it needs a new boiler or it needs the kitchen needs ripped out. What you're going to do? You're not going to have the funds there. So you're absolutely right.
Now, let me give you a quick example of that. Recently, I've got a 4-bedroom somewhere in the Buckhaven area, and now I'm getting told that the market rent for that 4-bedroom is probably about £850. Yeah, I'm charging £550. It's like, what? A 300 differential every single month. Now, I'm not going to charge £850, but I'm certainly going to put a rent up a wee bit in order to reflect that, to make sure I can reinvest back in the property, because something at some point will need to be done in terms of maybe a new kitchen or a new bathroom or a new heating system over that period of time. So I can't just sit on my hands, especially with the interest rates going up so much. And you're now, instead of you're at 2%, you're now paying 6%, which is 3 times as much. Yeah. So you have to take that into account and then think to yourself, okay, there's a medium there. Now we're not charging them full rent anymore, so they're still getting away with a huge difference, a huge differential.
It's what the tenant has to think about as well. If they were to leave and find another property, their rent would jump up £300.
Do you know, I've never heard the tenant, when I've done things like this and just put the rent up a small amount, saying, right, that's it, I'm off. Or we have actually, and then they've gone, actually, I'll stay. It's like, I wonder why you're staying. It's because you've looked at every other property and it's costing a fortune.
Yeah.
And then you think to yourself, you've got a really good gig where you are.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, renting to families. Families that do rent really don't like to move continually because they've got all that extra organisation. They've got the upheaval involved with moving children. So they can make reassuringly stable and long-term tenants as long as it's done properly and everybody's happy. And you can facilitate that by keeping in mind a few things. And families prioritise education. That's a really big thing. Over everything else, you'll find that the location and proximity to good schools and education for the children is always going to be up there with one of their key requirements. And choosing a property in a catchment zone for good school will serve you very well. I was at one on Friday, and really popular residential area, and the pool for that is going to be the school. In fact, I was at one on Thursday as well, and that was the pool as well, the school. So always think about the catchment area for schools if it's going to be a family home. Like you said, Jim, good durable and repairable finishes rather than the delicate designer ones and things. You need things that are going to stand the test of time if you're going to have a family in there with children and possibly pets and things as well. Natural wood beats this glossy veneer finish on like maybe laminate floorings and things, and the rough and tumble of family life and high traffic areas and things. You need to think about all this, and if that's not your mindset, find a good agent or somebody that helps you property source, that knows these things to look for, and helps you find the right property to accommodate a family unit if that's what your target audience is going to be.
You get, over the period of time, by the wisdom you've acquired, to be able to walk into a property and know exactly what you should do with it straight away, in order to make it as efficient and as durable as possible to last the longest amount of time, but still be extremely presentable and desirable to the tenant. In the most cost-effective way. I mean, that's a great textbook answer, isn't it, for a landlord, and for a tenant when you think about it as well. So I think it's just experience and expertise that does that. I don't think it's a lot of experience and expertise that a lot of, dare I say, letting agents just do not have, because they've maybe not been in the business for a long time, and they maybe just started off as a landlord for the first time, and then all of a sudden it's like, I just fancy being a letting agent at the same time, and it's like, you've only been a landlord for about a year. It's like, and all of a sudden you're an expert.
And also, a lot of letting agents don't have that mindset to help from the buy to let and the portfolio building and helping investors build a portfolio angle. They don't look at it like that, so they don't have that mindset either.
No, they don't. It's kind of like Ray Kroc with multi-mixers when he came across the McDonald's brothers. Ray Kroc's reason for getting the McDonald's brothers to franchise was purely just to sell more multi-mixer milkshake machines to them. That was it. He didn't want to get involved in it, but he tried to encourage them, and they went, no, we don't want a franchise. We don't like because it'll dilute our system. It'll dilute our processes. It'll dilute our service standards and our quality of our food. And then he thought to himself, okay, when he looked into it to try and make it better for them and try and work it out so they could encourage them to get more franchises, he then realized it's like, oh my God, this is a good business model. I should maybe do this myself. And that's that. And the rest was history. That's how McDonald's end up franchising, purely because of Ray Kroc and not because of the McDonald's brothers. But it was only his intention in the beginning to do that. So see how an opportunity can appear out of nowhere if you're prepared and ready for that opportunity to happen. The point of readiness, preparation and opportunity meet.
Yeah, definitely. And then look how, well, as you say, the rest is history, but look how successful that became.
So it's understanding what you should provide and how you should provide it. And that's why it's always about getting a good letting agent round to do that. Now, I'll be honest, if you've no intention of using a letting agent and you've no intention and you've got every intention of just doing it yourself, then please don't waste the letting agent's time.
Yeah, that's true. Been there,
because it's like how would you like somebody coming up to you and saying, I tell you what, if you're a draft person, a draftsman or a draftswoman or whatever it is, a draft person, I tell you what, do some drawings for me and show me what you can do, and then it's like for this and how you would do it, and it's like, oh, thanks very much, and then no even paying you for your services. That's a bit
it's people's time
not a nice
and expertise it's getting people's time and expertise for free, basically.
Yeah, I'm amazed at it so many times about how the property the property programs and property trainers actually say that. Go and speak to a letting agent and get them out and all the rest of it, and then just do it yourself. It's like, all right, okay, so you're just encouraging people to waste your time. Tell you what, I'll come at one of your courses and I'll no pay you for it, and you just tell me everything you need to do. Then it's like, no, I'm not doing that. Well, there you go. Don't do it to letting agents then. Don't take a loan of them. Don't use their time and devalue them and disrespect them if you're not going to use their services at all.
Yeah, because there's a lot goes into it. So yeah, and that's a respect thing as well. But yeah, even down to things like when you're looking at properties for family, thinking about things like the garden and having a really big lawn area where it's a lot safer than if you've got a garden that's maybe for couples and it's paved and it's got a lot of maybe unsafe things for young children. So having just a big lawned garden where they could play and be quite safe is quite an important thing.
Young children, the blank canvas model I'd be using for young children with a garden is grass with a bit of stone chipping round about it. That's it, really. And you could put a couple of plants in if you want. It's entirely up to the tenant if they want to do that. But grass with stone chipping, it's a blank canvas for the family it moves in, but it's nice and safe for the kids to play in as well.
It's low maintenance as well.
It's also just a quick go round with the lawnmower and that's it. We're done. Rather than actually have to constantly weed and then sort out the plants and trim everything back. And it's like, if that's what they want to do, then they could do that when they get in there. But no, everybody wants to do that. Everybody lives busy lives. So make it as easy and as nice as possible in a low maintenance environment, but nice and safe and secure. Fencing, wall or something like that.
And also at storage as well, kids are going to have bikes and scooters and things as well, somewhere to store them safely. And then parking as well. Now, I don't mean a driveway, it doesn't have to be a driveway, but as long as there's parking available for at least one car, even if it's just on the street, in front of the property or very close to the property.
I think the good thing in the early days, especially ex-local authority houses, the great thing is when they built a lot of these houses, they actually made a lot of communal parking. You know, like lay-bys and, you know, off-street bits.
I've got that in front of my house.
I'm actually particularly thinking, well, your house, Linwood, and then also in Methyl Hill, Birch Grove. So that had, you know, Birch Grove as well had parking bays and everything for everybody. So they didn't park around the edges and therefore stopping people going round all the way around. So, and then people then adapted their front gardens to become an off-street parking for a drive. So there's a lot of different opportunities. There's a lot of opportunities as well, especially if you've got a big front garden, because technically nobody ever uses the front garden. You usually always use the back garden because the front garden's obviously got everybody walking past it, and it's security and safety, especially for a young family or somebody that's got pets. In case anybody, you know, takes them or does anything or whatever it is. So that's why the front garden, I think, is right most of the time, actually, to just convert to off-street parking.
Yeah, and it's a good job that they've done that with these types of parking and things, because the amount of cars that are on the road now, I mean, we're just overrun with cars on the road. So these additional parking bays and things have come in really handy, and it's a good job that they're there. We would have nowhere to park. So, but yeah, renting to families, again, another topic we could go into a lot more detail, and we have in the past. We've got the show and the blog that we've done previously on renting to families. You could click into that on the links in the blog above as well, and read our previous article and discover the ins and outs of offering a home that's perfect for adults and children alike, and have that real family unit property.
So let's finish off there. My last bit of advice for anybody: property is probably the best investment you'll ever have for anybody. And I'll guarantee you that, even though you see all the legislation and the way that landlords are vilified and all the rest of it right now and picked on, if you can weather that storm and you've got, you know, tenacity and you've got a thick skin, then fine, it's okay. It's not all it's cracked up to be. You know, all this doom and gloom that everybody sees, and all these horror stories that you hear about your tenants, and all the horror stories you hear about landlords as well, are very, very minimal. Very, very minimal. The only reason they make it to the media and it makes it look like there's a huge, massive problem is because that's what sells the news. And the population, according to the think tank for England, for example, the problematic landlords, according to them, is 0.05% of the landlord population in England. 0.05, not 5.
2 million.
Yeah, out of 2 million, 0.05. That's what they said, out of 2 million. And I was gobsmacked when they said that, and they were talking about rent controls, because I thought, really? And they were talking about registration. I think, so you're going to do landlord registration in England just for 0.05% of the landlord population? Are you nuts? But that was, they were just jumping at it. It's a political thing. It's like, we'll get more votes from people because we're picking on the landlords, because the majority of, you know, there's more people that would vote for that than the landlords who would vote against it. So that's how politicians work. It's just wherever what goes in their favour, and they can get more votes for that reason. So I've no doubt we'll hear a lot more coming up to the election, how these politicians are going to get these problematic landlords, the 0.05% of the landlord population.
Yeah. No, that's a good way to finish off, Jim, and you're absolutely right. For anybody that wants to talk any further about anything that we've covered today, or just obviously in general, my contact number, my direct email is in this post attached, so feel free to reach out to me. You'll also catch us again on the rerun of this, and again next week, as usual. We'll be here Saturday morning, and we'll also be here Monday for the Wealth Creation Show. So I'll leave it there today. Thanks for joining, Jim, and sharing all your insights as usual, and thanks to everybody for joining in with comments and keeping it interactive.
Okay, bye-bye for now.
Thanks, Jim. See you later.